Hello, in this episode, I'll go through how to maintain the calendar on a day to day basis. And some of the information has already been briefly discussed, by repetitions are always a good thing. So, even though if I discussed a little bit before, I'll maybe reinforce some of the ideas. So, let's start. Changing past events to reflect real timelines is crucial for effective time management and creating a better and more accurate future. So I said it before for sure, but going back and changing things, let's say lunch that day was shorter, let's go ahead and reflect that in the events. Or today lunch has moved a little bit, let's go ahead and change that. Or if that doesn't work, then if work, we can go ahead change that thing too to actually reflect true timelines. It's crucial to actually do it. Use rounded minutes to quarters. Use 15 minutes increments for better visuals and easy tweaking. Only use smaller increments when it's time sensitive, things like appointments and such. So don't use, for example, if lunch was from 12:30 to 1:20 even, don't do 1:20. Use 15, use 30, use 45 or 0, unless, because that's going to be easier visually and also easier to deal with later. The only time we want to use, for example, 20, 35 or things like that is when you have an appointment. Let's say you have an appointment, doctor appointment right here. So I'll call it doctor appointment. And they told you it's 4:40 or 4:35 or something, some weird time. That's the only time we want to use it. But otherwise, we should use 15 minutes increments. Using a weekly time layout is the most recommended one, as it gives us the best view of everything. In addition, it will give us the possibility to drag and drop things for easier rescheduling. So that's a weekly timeout. We have other ones as well, but that's the weekly one. We can also zoom it in and out of it. It always makes it a little bit. There you go. You can zoom in and out, but I think the zoom out in a weekly layout is the best one that should be used, and it's easier on visuals. It's easier to see what's going on around. You will get used to it with time, and also it's easier to drag and drop here because you can move it to every day of the week, and you can also actually drag it to you just move it along to you wait a little bit at the end, and it would just let you moving to the next week, which is also fun if you're going out, you're not going out this week, but you want to go out this time, easy. So I'm sure maybe other calendars are giving you this opportunity also, or this ability, this feature, but again, I'm using Google Calendar, so that's the feature. Other calendars probably have the same, but not necessarily. So you should check. Try not to have too many repetitions for the same activity. Try to consolidate them. For example, try to not have more than 3 different breakfasts repetition in a week. This will save a lot of time when we reschedule and change our repetitions. So I used 2 timelines here in the model. There is the 7:45 during the week, and there is the 9:15 during the weekends, over the weekends. But try not to have more than 3, because let's say we have just something changed. We decided to change our breakfast from 7:45 to 8. And if you have gonna do in this opportunity, we're gonna do this in the following events, and then everything has been, and that's gonna be reflected over the next weeks. But the idea here is that if we have too many breakfasts, if we have too many repetitions, we have to one repetition to a few days of the week and the other ones in other ones, other days of the week, it would be harder to reschedule then. So therefore, I would recommend not to use more than 3 for the same event. For work, for example, you can use up to 3 is still easily, not easy, I would say even 2 is the best, but 3 shouldn't be used more because it's going to be hard to reschedule things. For example, reschedule, one of the reasons you would need to reschedule is if you're moving things around. Let's say you're waking up later and then breakfast would have to change and everything would have to change. So the more repetitions you have, the more things you would need to go and change. One of the ways is consolidation is using them at the same one, even though if there is like a little difference, if it's a 15 minutes difference, just let it go. Try to be as true as possible with yourself. If instead of working, we were on our phone, we should write that down for better learning outcomes. Wrong data will be inefficient. In some situation, we might feel guilty when we see the actual time spent, but this is a normal and it should not discourage us from persisting. Remember, this is a learning experience, not a scrutinizing tool. Another option is to use a more generalized title such as free time. So you don't have to go as far. So for example, I did free time, but it is good if we were on our phones, it is good to know. For example, free time, it's good to know. And if we were on for an hour on our phone, we can do phone time, for example, or just phone from 1 to 5 or something like that. We can do it, and it's good for us to know if we want to track that data. If we don't want to track that data, you can just leave it on free time, and you don't have to specify. But I think it's good things to know and to track, because especially when things we weren't supposed to do, it's always good to know what we were doing. And again, we should take that not as a scrutinizing tool. It might not feel great to see, there's a 2-hour thing on social media or something like that, or 2 hours on our phones, or 3 hours on the TV. It doesn't always feel good, but you can call it different names. For example, off time for TV and things like that. But again, it's for informational, it's for being more productive. So information is always good. Every once in a while, we should tweak and adjust repetitions to reflect true time frames. For example, if most days we notice that lunch takes longer than scheduled, we need to change it to reflect the new average time and see from there. In some cases, we would feel the need to do it as we would identify the pattern automatically. Let's say lunch does take, instead of an hour, 45 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and change it to reflect the new timelines. But we either we'll notice it by ourselves, but that would happen if we go back and change. We notice that it actually takes less, and we don't need an hour. We just need 45 minutes, and that's how we can learn it better. So, but it is recommended to oftentimes go to repetitions and change. That means going back and just looking around. Oh, okay, actually lunch, and here it's the same thing, but you can go back because it's not my calendar. But we can go back and see what we have changed, and based on the past, we can create a better future. Feel free to reschedule and move things around. Nothing is set in stone. The whole point is to have the most accurate data afterwards, and while doing the most of what has been scheduled. So it is okay to move things around. I move things around quite often. So it's not set in stone. It is better to do everything that is here. If there is workouts and things, and especially if we specifically schedule something and we want to do it, we should do it, but we should feel free to move things around. And again, the main point is to have the best accurate data to learn and create a more accurate future, and therefore moving things around would help us to, that's, if that reflects reality, that's what we should do. It is recommended to update the calendar 1 to 2 times per day for best memory of time frames. So I get asked often, how often should we tweak it? I think I tweak it about 1 to 2 times a day, unless it's a day that there is a lot going on and I really need to go and time frames are really important. I would go even more often, and there is just, I'm not going by what I've scheduled. But oftentimes I'll go 1 or 2 times per day. For example, one day in the morning, I'll go ahead and maybe change the current day a little bit. If there is something that needs to be changed, I woke up a little later or something, woke up earlier, and I'll go back and change the last few hours of the day before. And I also go ahead and do during the day or something, afternoons, you can go ahead and go change some of the morning or what's coming in the evening, for example. So 1 to 2 times per day is recommended. If you find yourself being late, waking up late, etc., it's recommended to adjust all of your schedule accordingly. This is done so we will have a better sense of how our day will look like. And if everything has to be rescheduled or canceled as a consequence, for example, we woke up late here, we woke up at 8, so it is good to go ahead and change things, and especially if we still want to have breakfast and everything, and let's say that means that you don't cancel work or something like that, you would want to move everything around a little bit to reflect your event. And if that means that you need to go from out of work earlier or later, just change things ahead, and everything could be moved. Depends. Not always everything has to move. Sometimes you would just cancel, just go out of work earlier, and then maybe dinner would move around a little bit. But you can always find a way to not move everything around, but everything that should be moved around should move around. And it's better to do it while waking up, because then you know what's coming up and you have the notifications and everything. And about notification, actually, it's a good point here to go. There is a setting of notification. I usually use the 30 minutes before. You can add more notification for hours. You usually can do between 30 to 60 minutes in advance, and then you would have it in notification settings. However, if it's a doctor appointment, for example, you have doctor appointment, I would add even a few, depends how far is it in the future. I would add a few days, for example. I would have maybe a 10 days even, that's a good one, a 10-day and a 3-day thing. So you can have it, and again, it's the same in most calendars. You would do a few of them, but in most other ones, I would use a 30-minute or a 60-minute, depends on your preferences. I usually use the 30-minute one, and you can see most of them would have a 30-minute before, because then you would get it in advance, and while doing that activity, you would have that notification. Very important part. Every once in a while, when we notice an event no longer reflects the true time frames, we should tweak the event to reflect new and correct time frames based on previous events. This will inevitably create ripple effects that should be addressed sooner rather than later. Ripple effects can spill over and take some time, but it will be worth it in the long run. What I'm talking about is, if we have noticed that, for example, we get out of work later or something, or lunch is actually moved to 2 p.m. So let's move lunch to 2 p.m. And as we see, what I've caused is everything that has to move, and we should address that. So we either want to move work later, or you want to split it into, so maybe make that longer and make that shorter, things like that. So that will inevitably create ripple effects, some of them are more serious than others. So if it's during the weekend, you can see there is more things that will create more ripple effects. You should address it. That could take, I think I spent some 15 minutes or 30 minutes sometimes in trying to create a better repetitions, because there is some ripple effects, but it should be addressed, and it's worth it. In the long run, it would definitely be worth it, because you see, that will keep on going for the rest of the life, or not the rest of your life, but it will be good for a few months at least. Worth it. If we find ourselves late on our schedule or going on a trip, we have two options. The first is delete everything on those days. The second is to reschedule what is important to us and distribute them to different days. The latter can create serious ripple effects, but we're more likely to stick to what we want to achieve. So let's go back actually to the Vegas. We had a Vegas option here. Let's say we go to Vegas. We have two options. One of them is delete everything. Delete work, delete this, and could be also deleting, let's say we have class, deleting class. The other option is to move things around. Let's say we still want to work, or we want to work less. So we can go ahead and maybe just an hour or something. We still want to do something. And we still want to have class, so then let's move it along after we come back from Vegas. But you can see that creates ripple effects, because we still want to go out, or do we want to cancel that? If we don't, we can go ahead, maybe go put it in before, and you can see that still we have a phone call. Where do you want to move the phone call? Maybe you can still do it in. What I'm trying to present here is that if we want to reschedule things, that will create ripple effects. The other opportunity again is just to delete everything. Let's say we can delete the phone call. So it really depends on your preferences, but if we reschedule, let's say it's a workout, it's an activity, and we don't want to miss it. It was here, and we don't want to miss it, which is also, it's good for us. So we can put it on different days, and that maybe we can cancel this one, for example. I'm just giving ideas. Don't get discouraged if you missed a few. With time, you're more likely to do it better. Even a little amount of information could be beneficial. So it also refers to, let's say there is an activity and we haven't done it, which we should delete, for example, or when we forgot, let's say work and that day was shorter, but we haven't got back and changed it. Don't get discouraged. Even a little bit of information, the more you do it, the better you would understand. And it's not like we're gonna go back and one or two things would change a lot. But it's always good. The more we do it, the better. But don't get discouraged if you don't. My last point here is replication feature. This should be used when we want to create another event similar to the one we already have. So let's go back to this, and let's say we want to try on similar days. We have lunch, but on some days we want to have it on 1 o'clock. We would go into this, and we have duplicate. So duplication feature. We still want to have it on. We're still gonna leave the lunch when we want to have it on 1, and we're just gonna change the date. Right now is every Monday, so we're gonna do, for example, Tuesday, Wednesday, and that's gonna. I created some mess here, as you can see. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this, but my point is that oftentimes it would be beneficial to use the duplication. It's easier. It's already set up, and the colors and everything, especially we're gonna go into the Pro episode, it would be more interesting there, but because we're gonna add more things to the calendar or to events, but using duplication is often a good solution. So that is for this episode. Next episode will be some qualifications, some things that the calendar would not necessarily be good for, and then we have another episode on pros, which is if you want to take the calendar into the next level. Until then, thank you.